I'm a country boy. My name is Ethan Parker. I have an associate degree in animal husbandry, and all I ever wanted was to own my own feed store and raise a family. After finishing junior college, I married my high school sweetheart, Emily Patterson. We grew up together, and she was the only girl I ever imagined myself living with. She was a beautiful brunette with a stunning figure that hadn't changed even after having two boys. I felt a sense of pride having her as my wife, and I was ready to go the extra mile for her. But Emily had one particular flaw. She often felt envious of those who lived luxurious lives. She avidly read the society pages in the paper and subscribed to every magazine that covered the glamorous lifestyles of the elite. When she went to the dentist's office, she would read the automobile magazines, and she was familiar with all the fancy cars. She knew all the designers and was familiar with their clothing lines. She wanted to be someone more than anything, and I wasn't able to provide that for her. I took a job in Omaha at a fancy food store that catered to the yuppie trade. This allowed us to be closer to the big city, and I can still work at what I loved. I liked my job and was good at it. I was able to give the customers special treatment, and the company rewarded my efforts by giving me flex time. Emily liked living in the city better than the country and was happy for a while when she decided to go to work. So we had to enroll the kids in daycare, but surprisingly, they adjusted well. Emily was working at Gilbert Medical, a company specializing in medical equipment like syringes and other supplies. Her job was in an office setting, and it seemed to bring her joy, dressing up and interacting with people beyond our farming community. As much as she enjoyed her work, I noticed her focus shifting away from our home life, gradually becoming more absorbed in her professional world. I ended up taking care of the boys most of the time. I would drop them off at the daycare center and pick them up after work. I fed them and usually got them ready for bed. I even made the meals and ended up cleaning the house most of the time. She did the laundry, taking care that all her clothing was ironed perfectly. We had been putting money aside every month so that down the line I would be able to buy my own feed store. Now, it seemed even with her working, we were no longer able to save anything. The daycare took some of the money, but most of it was going for trips to the beauty shop, nail salons, and expensive clothing stores. It puzzled me how we managed to have two incomes, yet save less money. Whenever I tried to address this with Emily, she grew defensive and distressed, shutting down conversations about it. Eventually, I stopped bringing it up altogether. Instead, I quietly opened a separate savings account to safeguard some money. Around this time, Emily began working extra hours and having secretive phone conversations. She became less attentive in bed. She wanted a newer and fancier car. She even talked about getting breast implants. There was no doubt in my mind that my wife was having an affair. I may be a simple country boy, but I wasn't dumb. At this point, I didn't even want to save the marriage. I just wanted to get everything straightened out and move on before it was too late. It was hard to pin anything down because I didn't associate with the people she worked with. But I was pretty sure that if something was going on, it was with somebody at work. I worked with a couple of good guys. They were not very educated, but they worked hard. My job may be their boss, but I never played the boss card. The tasks were completed seamlessly without the need for constant direction. There was a mutual understanding among everyone about the job at hand, fostering a positive atmosphere. Roy and Freddie, in particular, seemed essential for my strategy. I observed that every Wednesday, Emily dressed in her finest attire and fanciest lingerie. She seemed to take more time getting ready for work. I figured that would be a good time for me to start. I told the guys what was going on, and they arranged to take care of my deliveries and appointments that day. I parked by the entrance to the Gilbert Medical Plant parking lot. It gave me a good chance to catch up on some technical reading that I was behind on. At about 11 a.m., Emily came out and got into her car. She wasn't too hard to follow, and in a few minutes, she parked at the Holiday Inn lot. She parked at the west end of the lot, far from the office. A few minutes later, a guy pulled up in a red Corvette and parked at the east end of the lot. I didn't recognize the car, but when he got out, Emily got out of hers. They walked to an outside room on the first floor, number 117, and then they went in. He already had the key. My heart dropped, and I felt a little sick in the stomach. All I did was confirm my suspicions. I had no idea what I would do next. I chose to depart and head back to work, intending to carefully plan my next move while in the parking lot. Stepping out of the truck, I used my baling wire cutters to snip two of her valve stems, one in the front and another at the back. I was somewhat irritated, but for some reason I didn't cut a few of his. Also, the rest of the day dragged on extremely slowly. I picked up the kids after work, went home, and fixed supper. When she came in, I asked how her day was, and she said okay, except that she had a flat tire. One of the guys at work changed it for her. Nothing else was ever said about it. The next morning, I drove by the plan after dropping the boys off at the daycare. It didn't take me long to locate the red Corvette. As luck would have it, the guy had a reserved parking spot with a sign. I wrote it down. Alex Foster, distribution manager. Roy's wife also worked at Gilbert in the personnel department. By that afternoon, I knew everything there was about good old Alex. The most important thing was that he was already married. I learned he had received a reprimand for making inappropriate comments to a colleague and had encountered issues with his expense accounts. Gathering his address, phone numbers, including his cell, and even his SSN, I held on to this information without a clear plan of action. He had been married for 8 years to a woman named Amy. After a productive day's work, Roy, Freddie, and I managed to enjoy a beer before I had to head home to my kids. I still wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I was sure it would come together soon. I was trying to stay calm and logical about the situation, but I was really getting madder and madder every day. Once in a while, I found myself silently crying. I was hurt and felt like I couldn't fix myself. Having to live with Emily was getting more difficult for me. I just wanted it to end. I got another lucky break the next day when I remembered that one of my best customers, Mrs. Taylor, was the wife of the Gilbert Medical Company president. I never met him, but she and I got along great. I was being especially friendly with Mrs. Taylor, trying to figure out if I could use our relationship to my advantage. When Mrs. Taylor's daughter, Lily, came over, Lily was in her last year of vet school. Mrs. Taylor went into the barn to do some work, and Lily and I talked for about an hour. I enjoyed my time with her and felt a little guilty after I left, but it passed quickly. That weekend, I spent some time in the garage doing some welding. I took a small piece of flat steel and welded 4 sharp points to it. I made the points out of concrete nails so that they were really hard and stiff. The plate was about 6 by 6, and it was going to be my first step at getting my revenge by harassment. I saw Mrs. Taylor again on Tuesday. I was moping around a little while unloading the order. "I'm not feeling very cheerful today. What's the matter, Bill? You seem quite down," Mrs. Taylor inquired, concerned. Bill replied, "I have some personal issues today, Mrs. Taylor. I'm sorry, I might not be the best company." Mrs. Taylor suggested, "Let's grab some coffee, and you can share what's bothering you." They made their way back to the house and settled in the kitchen, which had a decor reminiscent of a restaurant with its stainless steel and granite finishes. It was like a magazine. I thought to myself, Emily would love this. Mrs. Taylor set the coffee down and just leaned forward and said, "Well, how can you help me, Bill?" "Well, I don't know, unless you tell me the problem." I really didn't want to talk to her about it, but finally decided maybe it could help my wife. Emily works at Gilbert Medical, and I think she is being coerced into having sex with one of her bosses, but I can't prove anything. Why do you think this is going on? Little things, mostly, but last week I found them both together at the Holiday Inn. My wife doesn't realize. I know, and I don't know how to bring up the subject. I don't know if this is something she is being made to feel obligated to do, or if it is something she wants to do. Our family life has deteriorated to the point where she doesn't seem to care about the children or me. She appears to be keeping it a secret, and that is what really bothers me. Who's the guy? I think his name is Alex Foster. I don't know if Emily works for him or if they work in different parts of the plant. I never met him. Do you want me to see if I can help? I paused a little and lowered my head. If you think something could be done quietly, I would be glad to try it. But I don't want to raise a big stink. Okay, let me look into it. I'll see you next Thursday with that delivery of oats. I thanked her, and as I got up to leave, I asked, "Where is Lily?" "Back at school. She'll be home this weekend. Why don't you bring the boys up so she can meet them?" Well, this turned out far better than I expected. I am sure Emily will have no problem letting me take the boys on an outing. It might be a good weekend. The next morning, it was pouring rain. Emily dressed carefully for her special day again, and I said nothing while I watched. After dropping the kids off at the daycare center, I stopped by work. The guys were all set up to cover my morning shifts for me. Roy was going to use my truck, make my deliveries in the log entries. I would initial all the entries after the times when I got back to work. Freddie brought his cousin's van to work, and I loaded a floor jack and back of it. We had fastened my steel plate to the left of the jack. We got all the trucks loaded, and after they took off for their deliveries, I left for the Holiday Inn. Right on the dot, Emily arrived and parked precisely where she had parked earlier. Alex followed shortly after, parking his car in the exact same spot he had used previously. Once they went inside the room, I waited for about 10 minutes, giving them time to make themselves comfortable. Despite the pouring rain, I braved the weather, pulling the jack out from the back of the van. With determination, I rolled it through the downpour, the water drenching me as I maneuvered towards Alex's car. I slid the jack under his engine block and jacked it up. It took only a few seconds till I heard the pop sound as the nails punctured the oil pan. I dropped it down and moved to the back of the Corvette. A few seconds later, I heard the same pops go into the fuel tank. Oil and gas were streaming out. I took the jack back to the van. The whole thing took less than a minute. I walked down to Emily's car and cut slices and 2 valve stems again. By then, I was ready to leave. I drove past Alex's car, flicked a lit cigarette out the window, and drove off. In my rearview window, I saw the flames shoot up and a few seconds later heard the explosion as I left the lot. I felt better. Emily came home from work a little late. She didn't eat any supper and went right to bed. I played with the boys a while, gave them a bath, and tucked them in. I slept on the couch that night. Emily stayed in bed the next morning while I got the boys ready for daycare. We ate breakfast and left. She didn't stir. Not a word escaped her lips. I didn't inquire either. Come 9 a.m., her car was notably absent from the driveway. Once we finished loading all the trucks, an unexpected visitor arrived. Police Lieutenant John Fritz. He seemed amiable enough. "Could you walk me through your work routine yesterday?" he inquired. "Routine deliveries, nothing out of the ordinary. Why do you ask? Is there something specific you're looking for? Can you verify your whereabouts around noon?" I went into the office and got the delivery logs from the previous day. I laid them in front of him. Each stop had the location item delivered, time unloaded, and my initials. He smiled and snickered a little. "That's a pretty good log. Do you guys do that every day? Would you like to see the logs for the last month?" He shook his head no and smiled again. I didn't know if I should feel good or bad. "Would you like to tell me what this is about?" He seemed to be reluctant to go into details, but finally, he opened up. "There was a car damaged yesterday at the Holiday Inn in East Omaha, and we are trying to find out if anyone knew anything about it." "Why me?" "Well, another car that was near the damaged one had 12 stems cut. The car belonged to your wife. We were wondering if it was a coincidence or not. First off, I don't know what my wife's car was doing in the Holiday Inn parking lot. And second, what connection did she have with the damaged car?" "The damaged car belonged to an associate that she worked with. It seems they were in a lunch meeting with clients from a company at the hotel, and things unfolded during that time." "Have you spoken to the individuals they dined with?" I asked. "They couldn't recall the names," came the reply. "Are we going to have an honest conversation? Or will we keep dancing around the details all morning?" The lieutenant reclined in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Do you know a fellow named Alex Foster?" "Never met the man, and that is the honest truth." "I believe you." He smiled again. "I don't like to get in the middle of domestic disputes and hope I don't have to come see you again. Here's my card. Call me before anything else happens." "Okay." He shook my hand. "Sorry I had to bring this to your attention. If I can do anything to help, let me know." "Okay." As he walked away, I said thanks. "But you really didn't tell me anything. Put the pieces together after work." When the kids and I got home, Emily's car was in the driveway. She was dressed casually and had supper ready. She said she didn't feel well and had called in sick. She still didn't say anything about what happened the day before, so I didn't bring it up. She went to bed early, and I took care of the boys again and slept on the couch. She was up and about the next day getting ready for work. When I left with the boys for daycare after dropping them off, I went by the doctor's office and requested a check for STDs. Work was normal for a Friday when I got home. Emily was there again. After supper, I told her that I was taking the boys to spend the next day at one of my customers' farms. I asked her if she wanted to come along, knowing full well that she would find a reason to refuse. She said she had some shopping that she wanted to do, and I didn't push it any further. I didn't care if it was shopping or a date. The results were the same Saturday with Cindy, and the boys at the Gilberts Ranch were great. We spent the whole day having fun. Mrs. Taylor made a great lunch for everyone, and I didn't want it to end. Cindy loved the boys, and they seemed to like her a lot. Also, Mr. Gilbert wasn't there, so I still didn't get to meet him. Mrs. Taylor didn't say anything at all about our previous conversation, and it didn't appear that Cindy was aware of it. I hated to go home, but eventually we had to. Emily didn't ask at all about our day. She just didn't care. The boys tried several times to tell her all the things they got to do, but she tuned them out. In the end, they gave up. She did inquire once why I wasn't sharing the bed anymore. I told her it was because of work stress, how I kept tossing and turning, and I didn't want to disrupt her sleep. That was the final conversation we had about it. The following week seemed uneventful. On her birthday, I observed she hadn't made any particular arrangements, so I figured any plans for the day had been called off. That was fine with me because I had a lot of work to catch up with. I stopped in to see a divorce lawyer that I had heard about, and she gave me some handouts and brochures with lots of information. She had some fill-in-the-blank forms that looked interesting. Everything was back to normal till next Wednesday. She started off with a morning shower and then carefully did her hair. She had new black sexy underwear and a new perfume. It even looked like new shoes. I was being careful not to let her see me looking, and I rushed out with the boys. I was sure this was going to be a date day. After dropping off the boys, I went by the plant and checked his parking spot. A new Porsche Boxer was sitting in his slot. I jotted down the license number and rushed back to work. The guys were as excited as I was about the new development. We rushed all the morning deliveries and fudged the logs again. I am sure John Fritz could see through this ruse, but we did it anyhow. We had a free and long lunchtime. Roy continued with the deliveries. Freddie stopped by the swimming pool supply store and got 2 big bottles of hydrochloric acid. I want to spend lunch with John Fritz. John gave me a weird look when I walked into his office with pulled pork sandwiches, fries, and a couple of Cokes. I said hi and sat down across from him. He knew something was up and smiled from ear to ear. I said, I thought we could have lunch together and he could bring me up to date on the car damage case. I had to figure out how to keep him busy for about 2 hours. It was going to be a long lunch. While I was trying to be pleasant, Freddie was down at the Holiday Inn parking lot. He found the Boxer and carefully poured acid all over the trunk, fenders, and deck. He sliced through the convertible top and doused the leather seats and floor mats with acid. Even the dashboard received a grim dose of acid as an added touch. To top it off, he added a box of mothballs into the gas tank. The naphtha in the mothballs would wreak havoc on the engine if someone dared to start it. Any remaining acid was meticulously spread across the surface of the tires. Before he left, he snipped the valve stems on Emily's car again. It was all over within 15 minutes. The only bad part was that I didn't know how long the two of them would be in the room. John and I chatted about frivolous things for the longest time until he finally said, "What the hell are you up to?" "Just wanted to make sure I had a good alibi in case something happened to Alex Foster's car today." "What's special about today?" "The pulled pork sandwich was on special." I took out my cell phone and called the daycare center. "Hi, Carol. This is Ethan Parker. I'm going to be tied up at work this afternoon and was hoping you could call Janice and ask her to come pick up the boys." "Thanks. I really do appreciate it. You can catch her at 8743211X 117. You might have to ask for her by name. Try and call as soon as possible to make sure you catch her." "Okay. Thanks again." John leaned back in his chair and snickered. Boy, those pork sandwiches tasted good. Everything was silent for a while, and finally John said, "Do you think I should call Mr. Foster and ask how his car is?" "Why would you want to do that?" "You wouldn't happen to know where I could reach him, do you?" I gave him his cell number and the number of the Holiday Inn. Room 117, pick 1. John put the phone on speakerphone and called the hotel number. After a few rings, Alex Foster answered, breathing heavily. "Hello? Who is this?" "Mr. Foster, this is Detective Fritz. I was calling to let you know that we still don't have any leads on who damaged your car." "Why are you calling here? How did you get this number?" "I'm a policeman, Mr. Foster. Did you get a new car yet?" "Yes, I did. Why do you want to know?" I replied. "Just making sure we're not facing a situation like the last time," came the response. "Is the car with you currently?" they inquired. "Yes, it's parked out in the lot," I confirmed. "Is everything all right with it?" They pressed further. "Let me take a look," I said. We could hear Alex's murmurs in the background as he peered out the window toward the parking lot. A few squawks and a low moan resonated through the room. He came back on the phone. "Something doesn't look right. I'll have to get dressed and go check. I'll call you right back." "Okay." "But Mr. Foster, why aren't you dressed now?" "None of your damn business. I have to go." They both hung up. John looked at me and smiled. "Happy?" "Of course. Look, I have to get back to work." "If you have any questions, call me. Okay. Maybe we'll have lunch again next week." "I hope not. This will have to end soon before somebody gets hurt." I went back to work. Roy had the logs in shipshape condition, and Freddie had dumped the acid bottles where they wouldn't be found. Tonight at home would be interesting. Emily had picked up the boys but said nothing and went to bed early again. John came to see me the next day. He explained all the damage done to the car and that Alex's insurance was pending since the Corvette incident. The car was totaled. He was out over $60,000. Alex insisted that I had something to do with it, even after John told him that I was with him when it happened. Of course, John knew I had a part in it but couldn't prove a thing, and I don't think he wanted to. I don't know how Emily was getting her tires fixed. I never asked, and no one ever volunteered. Since Emily had never come clean about the whole situation, I decided it was time to end it all. My STD test came back. "Okay, I had filled out the paperwork for the lawyer to get started on the divorce. I was planning on going out to the Gilberts ranch this weekend with the boys, just in case Cindy was there. If not, we would spend the day with March. The only loose end was that I still didn't have any proof of the extramarital sex. The weekend was good. Cindy was there. The kids were ecstatic, and we all had a great time again. We were a tight-knit family, and I found myself yearning for that bond again. The boys felt it too. Cindy remained unaware of the situation, but thankfully she didn't pry for details. As I prepared to depart, Marge gave me a comforting wink and reassured me, saying, "Things will work out." An opportunity arose for a new position, 100 miles away. It came with a promise of better pay, an improved job role, and the enticing possibility of owning a stake in the business in the coming years. It was perfect. The only bad point was that we would not be near Cindy the next Wednesday. Janice did her dress-up thing again. I don't know what her boyfriend was using for a car, but she was definitely getting ready for another visit with him. I assumed they were still going to the same place. I was going to have to do something, but I really hadn't planned ahead for it. The guys and I were trying to figure out what to do. When Marge Gilbert drove up, she motioned for me to come over and told me to get in the car. She didn't say anything, but just drove down to the plant. She parked in the back, and we went in by a private entrance straight to Mr. Gilbert's office. Marge went through the introductions, and his secretary brought us all coffee. We talked about frivolous stuff for a while, and finally I said, "Did you bring me here for a reason?" Mr. Gilbert laughed. "It is time to bring the show to a close. Marge has briefed me on what is going on, and I had a little in-house investigation done. As soon as everything is in place, we will get started. We should have all the information you need by the end of the day. If I do anything to embarrass you, Bill, I apologize ahead of time. It is not my intention to do anything to hurt you." We chatted a little more to kill time in March. I could see me smile when the talk turned to Cindy. I was trying not to be obvious about it, but I did a poor job. The phone rang and everyone's ears perked up. "What's going on?" "Okay, thanks for the call. You know what to do now, right?" Mr. Gilbert smiled and said, "Okay, everything is in place. We can get started. Ken and your wife are in their regular room at the Holiday Inn. Ken drove a company Benz to get there. That is against company policy. So it is being brought back to the plant right now. I'm sorry to say, but I think your wife also has a couple of flat tires. It appears to be some type of tradition." He put the phone on speaker and dialed the room. "Ken, this is Mr. Gilbert. Sorry to disturb you, but I have to discuss a very important matter with you." Ken sort of stuttered and stammered a little. "Yes, okay, no problem. How did you get this number?" "Ken, that's not important. But what is important is that the legal department was notified of a possible sexual harassment situation. It is necessary for me to get correct answers here, Ken. So listen carefully. Is there a female company employee there with you now?" There was a pause and some background conversation that we couldn't make out. "Yes, sir, there is Ken. Is she there of her own free will, or is she there because of some coercion or threatening on your part?" "No, sir, absolutely not, sir. There was no coercion of any type at all. She is here of her own free will. I didn't force her to do anything. The sex is all consensual then?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely. It's all consensual." "That's great, Ken. Thanks. That's all I needed to hear to straighten this mess out. I really appreciate your honesty on this touchy subject. We'll get a statement ready to attest to that, and we'll be all set. Now, I need to also verify it with the young lady. Will you put her on, please?" There was a flurry of background noise again that we couldn't make out. Finally, Janice came on the line. "Sir, how can I help you, Janice? Did Mr. Beecham coerce you or threaten you in any way to get to go there with him?" "No, sir. He didn't threaten me in any way. That's good to hear. Then the sex was consensual and you were not intimidated in any way. Is that correct?" There was a pause again and lots of muffled speaking. Janice came back on the line. "Yes, sir. It was consensual. That's good to hear. When you and Ken get back to the plant, we will have the statements ready for you to sign." "Can you put Ken back on, please, sir?" "How did you know my name?" "Don't worry about it, Janice. It's not important." After Ken came back on the phone, Mr. Gilbert told him to return to the plant so they could sign the papers in the legal department. He hung up the phone and smiled. "March, why don't you take Bill out for lunch and come back in a couple of hours? The legal people should be done by then, and we can all get our lives back to normal." We had a great lunch. I had a hard time not gushing, but I just couldn't thank her enough. She finally made me agree that we would not talk about the subject or what was done, ever again. She also made me promise not to say anything at all to Cindy about it. That was a good sign. I told Marge about my new job offer, and she was glad for the boys and me. After lunch, we returned to the plant, and I picked up notarized copies of Ken and Janice's statements. They both swore that they had consensual sex outside of their marriage. The legal people assured me that that was enough for my lawyer to lock in the divorce. Ken and Janice were both fired. Their personal belongings were packed before they got there, and they were escorted out of the building. Unfortunately, neither one of them had a car. Marge gave me her car to use and said I could return it the next day. I dropped the papers off at the lawyer's. She made me several copies of each one, said I was going to send to Ken's wife. I went to the bank and closed the accounts. I paid off all the credit cards and canceled them. I called the gas, water, electric, and phone companies and arranged to have the utilities turned off on Friday afternoon. I stopped by to see John Fritz and told him I have been a good boy. He laughed. I notified the landlord I would not be staying the next month. I gave notice at work. They were glad for me, but unhappy about my leaving. Freddie followed me to the Gilbert Ranch with my truck so I could return Marge's car. It was time to pick up the boys and head home. I dreaded walking through the door. Emily's car wasn't in the driveway. She was sitting on the couch crying when we got in. This was the first time she had shown any emotion at all to file boxes of her personal stuff from work. We're sitting there. I fed the boys and turned on the TV for them. I stood by her as if to give her an opportunity to speak if she wanted to. You had to do it, didn't you? You just had to screw up everything in my life. Why the hell couldn't you just mind your own business? You had no justification to meddle in mine. I was amazed she still looked at the whole situation as if it all revolved around her. She cared nothing about the children or me. She gave no thought at all. The kids, wife, Amy, our family, our life, and our plans all meant absolutely nothing to her. Her only concern was what she was doing at the moment. Nothing else mattered. I was relieved that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life with her. I didn't say a thing. I went up and took a shower. Later, while I was getting the boys ready for bed, she went into the bedroom and closed the door. The next day, I took the boys with me to work. I just made sure that there were no loose ends and that Roy and Freddie were able to keep up with the system I had set up. We went to some stores and collected boxes for the move. I drove by the Holiday Inn and Emily's car was gone, so I figured she had it repaired by now. Fixing flat tires must have put a big dent in her shopping budget for the last month. Emily wasn't home when we got there. We were only taking clothes and toys. I left everything else there for Emily to get rid of. Of course, she didn't know that by the next day, all the utilities would be turned off. Damn, I was a mean son of a bitch. As we were pulling out of the driveway, Emily was parking. She just stood by her car and watched us drive down the street. I took the boys to Chuck E. Cheese and we spent the night at a motel. The next morning, I took the boys to daycare. I gave Carol some cookies and party favors and told her it was the boys' last day, and I wanted them to enjoy it with their friends before I left. She took me aside. What was the deal with your wife last week? I didn't want to ask, but since you were leaving, I am dying to know. She was very upset when I called. She insisted on knowing where I got that number. And when I told her you gave it to me, she started swearing like a sailor. She didn't say anything when she picked them up, but I could tell she was really pissed. I'm sorry, Carol. I sort of set you up. Emily was having an affair. She was at the Holiday Inn with her boyfriend. And I was hoping if I got you to call and interrupt their party that she would have second thoughts about the whole thing. It didn't work. She just ended up getting mad at both of us. I am serving her with divorce papers this afternoon, and the boys and I are leaving for a new job right after I picked them up. It was a cheap shot on my part, and I apologize for getting you involved. I want to see my divorce lawyer. She had everything ready. I was getting the kids, and Emily would have visitation rights anytime she wanted. That was fine with me because I didn't think she would be interested in them anyhow. Everything else was split 50-50, but there wasn't much to speak of. There was no alimony, no child support, and no cash settlements of any type. I left her all the furniture, appliances, and household stuff. I really didn't want them. She kept her car. I didn't want it because it kept getting flat tires. All I had to do was hand the papers to Emily. Unless she contested it, everything would be final in 3 months. A copy of Ken and Janice's notarized statement was attached to the divorce paperwork. A small margin note. The lawyer maid indicated that the statements would be kept private if all the terms of the divorce were agreed upon. There were no questions. The car was in the driveway, so I was sure she was home. I sat in the driveway for the longest time. I had loved Janice. She was the only girl I was ever close to. I figured our relationship was normal and had not even given it a thought that I was not providing what she was craving. She never let me know directly, and I was too dense to pick up all the clues. I had failed her in so many ways. What she did was deceitful on her part, but I felt some of it was because of my inattention. I knocked on the door of my own house, and it felt weird. She opened the door for me. She looked tired. She asked if I wanted anything to drink. I handed her the papers. She didn't open them. I just looked at them and back up at me. I looked at her and said, "Why?" I couldn't tell if she was mad or sad. After a few seconds, she finally opened up. He smelled like aftershave. You smelled like fertilizer. He wore Armani suits while you were jeans. He ate lobster and steaks while you ate ribs and burgers. He had a London Fog overcoat while you wore a Carhartt. He drove a nice, fancy car while you drove a truck. He had manicured nails while yours were always dirty. He had a real job, and you were still just a farm boy. Is this enough for you? I can go on all day if you like. I was hoping for a life that you couldn't give me. I'm sorry that we got married, Bill. I married you for the wrong reasons. I should have realized that you would not be willing or able to give me what I really wanted. I saw you as a means of getting away from my parents and didn't think far enough ahead. I'm truly sorry for that, but I can't change the way I feel. I love my children, but I regret having them. I know that sounds terrible, but I do not seem to have a motherly instinct. I was hoping that by finding someone who could fill the empty holes in my dreams, that I would feel satisfied. But it just made me less satisfied with my present situation. I'm sorry I misled you. I am sorry. I was a poor mother to my children. I'm not sorry for chasing my dreams and looking for something better. What about his wife? What about your husband? What about your children? What about your family? Her demeanor seemed to change immediately. My questions made her mad, and she no longer appeared to be sorry for her actions. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. It's my turn. I want to live the life I always dreamed of. A farm boy, husband, and 2 dirty-faced, snot-nosed kids. Don't do anything to help me get there. I got your damn papers now. Just leave so I can get on with my life. Well, that made things easy. I just turned and walked out. When I picked up the boys, Carol said to let her know if I needed her to make any more phone calls. I called the utility companies and told them not to disconnect until the end of the month. I guess I felt a little sorry for her. The divorce was final in 3 months. I never heard a thing from Janice, the lawyer said. Everything went smooth as planned. My new job was great. However, I missed out on getting a chance to buy the business. Somebody else got it, along with a quarter section of prime land attached to it. My boss said they were going to turn it into some kind of horse breeding farm. My job was safe, but my chance at owning my own place took a step back. 2 weeks later, they started construction next to the feed store. We were all trying to guess what was being built, and finally one of the guys asked the site engineer. It was a vet clinic for large animals. I thought that was interesting, but dismissed it as wishful thinking. They got the whole building up in less than 60 days. The new owner was due to show up Saturday. The boys and I went by on the way to lunch. I was a little curious. All of a sudden, both the boys started yelling, "Cindy, Cindy." There she was, looking better than ever. Marge was with her. Cindy had gotten her vet degree and wanted to raise show horses while she ran a large animal clinic. She was showing the boys around the new building while Marge and I talked. We all went to lunch together, and Cindy told us that she was also building a new house on the property so she could be close to her work. The boys and I were grinning ear to ear all the way home that night. 5 years later, Cindy was raising beautiful horses. Her clinic was a big success, and I had just opened my 6th feed store. The boys had 2 baby sisters that they adored. My mother-in-law, Marge, and Mr. Gilbert come by every weekend. I never learned what his first name was. Janice never came to visit the boys.